Here is my opinion on the best and worst books from my favorite authors. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm doing something a little bit fun. I'm trying to be a little bit creative, and I'm sure a lot of people have done this idea before, but I wanted to briefly talk about some of my favorite books from my favorite authors and also the worst books, in my opinion, that they have also written. It's going to be featuring a bunch of rom-com authors that you probably love and enjoy, so let's get started. So the first author that I do want to talk about is obviously the queen of romantic comedy in my opinion. I really love this author a lot. I know it's not for everyone because she tends to write a character who is a little bit wishy-washy, a little bit flimsy, a little bit silly, but she's my favorite, and it's Sophie Kinsella. And now Sophie Kinsella is actually a UK romance author. She has a lot of dry British humor that I really enjoy, and our characters always get into very zany and silly situations. One of my favorite novels from her is this one called Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella, and I've talked about this book years ago on my channel when Can You Keep a Secret came out as a movie, and I basically never watched the movie because I saw the trailer and I was automatically like, this is not for me. But Can You Keep a Secret is my favorite book because it follows a heroine who is a underdog. Our heroine has changed many jobs in her 20s, and she doesn't really know which career path she wants to take, but she has settled kind of like small role in this corporation that makes energy drinks and energy bars, and she feels like that she's doing good enough work that she can get a title change and a promotion, and she can finally feel that she is comparable to her cousin who is really successful and owns like an office furniture shop. She feels like she has a good life, and she feels like she has a decent life since she does have a really nice looking boyfriend. She has parents that do love her, and she has a job that she doesn't completely hate. But what happens is that her boss sends her over to a different country for a business trip so that they can explain the power of energy drinks that the company offers, but it goes completely wrong, and on the plane ride back home, she experiences turbulence and she hates flying. So she's really scared and she's really nervous. She thinks she's gonna die. So she leans over and tells the passenger that's sitting beside her all the secrets that she has held, and telling him this and confessing him this just in case she does die, so that at least, you know, God maybe will be like, thanks for confessing. I don't know. But what she doesn't expect is to safely land and to also go back into the office to meet the new boss. And that person just so happens to be the passenger that she told all the secrets to. And now she and him must work together in the office, working on the few projects that he's in that country for. And they obviously start getting to know each other and growing feelings for each other. And she also feels that she is more empowered to leave a relationship that she's not happy with. So I really like this book because of the underdog elements to it. But the one book that I didn't like from Sophie Kinsella is actually this one called My Not So Perfect Life. And this one is not her latest release. It was released in 2017. But this one follows our heroine who it comes from similar backgrounds of working an office job that she doesn't really like. But the one thing that she really likes is Instagram and creating this illusion and idea that she has a perfect life on Instagram. She like takes pictures of really fancy dishes, takes pictures of her on going on vacation, and people think that she's really happy. But in reality, things could not be worse, and things are a little bit messy. And then what happens is that she ends up getting fired from her job, and she needs to go back home to her parents' farm, and that's where it's like a bed and breakfast too as well, and she's helping taking care of the things, and then her boss sees her really like rustic life and wants to be a part of it for her own personal and business gain. So now she is kind of looped back into her toxic boss's life. Meanwhile, her heroine also falls in love with an office colleague who she was never really too sure if he would like her back because of his upbringing, of how he is like super rich and he might be snobby, but they gain a budding relationship. Now, I didn't really like this book because I just felt like that the illusion of this book featuring so much about social media was just not interesting to me. I felt the romance took a back seat in this book because we were so focused on the toxic relationship that she had with her boss that I just didn't like it, and I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. And I was really actually disappointed when I read this book when it first came out, because I was so excited for a new Sophie Kinsella novel. Now, the next author that I do want to talk about is Tessa Dare. She is a historical romance author. I've read all her works, and I've actually have a guide on Tessa Dare because I read all of her books. But the one that I love the most is obviously the one that I talk about the most, which is Do You Want to Start a Scandal? And it's book number 5 in the Spindle Cove series. And this one follows our heroine who accidentally gets herself tangled up with our hero in a library, and people think that they have been secretly hooking up, and now they're being forced into this marriage, and she doesn't want any part of it because she wants to marry for love, and she doesn't want to be looped up in these like silly things like this. So she's trying to be the next Sherlock Holmes and trying to solve who was actually in the library and who was actually hooking up, because it certainly wasn't her. Meanwhile, our hero doesn't feel like that the marriage is that bad of an idea, and he's like following her along and trying to get her out of trouble, but he's also trying to seduce her and convince her to come to him because he really likes the idea of marrying her. And I just love this book because it was just so funny, it was so lighthearted, it was so sweet, and I couldn't recommend it enough. Definitely a 5 out of 5 stars. But now, if we were to move on to my personal opinion of the worst book that was written by Tessa Dare, and the one that I didn't like the most, was actually The Wallflower Wager, which is book number 3 in the Girl Meets Duke series. I didn't like this one because I felt like that there was really lacking in that like fluffiness that I really adore from Tessa Dare's books. That connection was just always broken up because our heroine was so obsessed with animals. So our heroine lives kind of like a free life where she takes care of a bunch of animals on her property. Meanwhile, our hero has like the property next door that he really needs to sell because he wants to make money, but all these animals keep invading his property and his space, and nobody wants to buy a house next to a farm basically. So he's always trying to convince her to like take her animals and leave, or to like get rid of the animals. But during that process of them like arguing with each other about like property issues and things like that, they end up having a relationship with each other because they get to know each other a lot more. But I just didn't like our heroine. I thought our heroine was just too whimsical with her animals. Like, it was just crazy. It was not funny to me. I didn't felt like that there was that connection that Tessa Dare usually has with her characters, like that chemistry build up. And I was left frustrated and towards the end because I was like, that's it. So I gave this one a 2 out of 5 stars. So the next historical romance author that I do want to talk about is one that I talk about quite often. I've given her books like really high ratings. Like, she is definitely one of the authors that are always leaning towards the 4 and 5 out of 5 star ratings. And the lowest rating that I have right now is a 3 out of 5 stars that I am going to be talking about. So it's really hard for me to pick a favorite book from her since majority of the books are 4 or 5 out of 5 stars. But I think I'm just going to like talk about this one called What a Difference a Duke Makes by Lenora Bell, simply because I remember reading it in one sitting, and I remember vividly me sitting there in awe of how well she described this like scene where our couple is just sitting there enjoying each other's silence, enjoying each other's company while looking at the children play. So What a Difference a Duke Makes follows our hero, who is a inventor, like he's an engineer, he's really passionate about his work, but suddenly he's left with 2 youngsters at his doorstep that claim to be his like children. They're twins, and he doesn't know what to do with them because he only knows about like train engines and like engines. He doesn't know how to take care of 2 little toddlers. So he sets out to hire a governess to help him take care of this stuff. And in walks our heroine, who is really kind, who is really good at doing what she does, which is taking care of children, and she's really smart. So he trusts her with them, and they soon build this like relationship together where they're kind of acting like a family. Our heroine is kind of like a motherly figure to the children. Meanwhile, she is very beautiful and she is seductive towards our hero, and our hero gets easily distracted by her and is always amazed by her ability with the children. And our hero has to learn to be a better father to the 2 children, while also admitting to himself that he might like the governess after all. I really enjoyed this one, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. There's definitely some times where I got a little bit emotional and I may have cried. But I think one of the books that I didn't really like from Lenora is this one called One Fine Duke. This one is part of her School for Duke series and book number 3. I read this book actually twice just to see if I was wrong the first time, and maybe the first time when I was reading it I was in a reading slump, but it's still a 3 out of of 5 stars for me. It involves our heroine who really wants to investigate and get herself into trouble. Meanwhile, our hero is actually like a spy, I believe, and they both are working together to like uncover secrets in the family and things like that. Our heroine was just a little bit too zany for me. She was getting herself into a lot of trouble. She was asking a lot of questions that just didn't make sense to me, kind of annoyed me a bit. So I ended up only giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't the same, you know, heat factor that I wanted. Enemies to lovers, the sexual tension, I didn't feel that because I felt that they were just friends to begin with. And friends to lovers romances are fine, but they're not really my style, and it's not really the trope I lean towards. Now, the next author that I do want to talk about is another favorite of mine for historical romance. Her name is Lorraine Heath. I've talked about this book numerous times, and I've made my friends read this book, but this one's called Once More, My Darling Rogue. It involves a heroine who is very snooty. She thinks that she is the best because she is rich, she is beautiful, but she gets herself into an accident, bumps her head, and she loses all her memories. It's amnesia, historical romance. And our hero, who likes her and thinks she's beautiful, also hates her at the same time because of her personality and everything else that's wrong with her, which is her judgmental personality. He ends up saving her, and he brings her back to his home, and he takes care of her, and he plays a trick on her by basically telling her that, you know, you're actually my servant and that you need to help out around the house and things like that. So she's kind of like helping out around the house while trying to remember what exactly is her past because she doesn't believe she's a servant. I really like this one because it was just so funny. It was so like angsty too towards the end when our heroine finally figured out that, you know, her life was never a servant and that she was actually an heiress, and now our hero needs to beg for forgiveness essentially. And I really enjoyed it. I recommend it to my friends. They really enjoyed it too as well. Now, moving on to the book from Lorraine Heath that I least like. Now, I never read all of Lorraine Heath's books yet, but I think one of the books that I didn't like is actually her Western novel. This one's called Texas Destiny. It involves our heroine who is a mail-ordered bride, and our hero's like brother picking her up from like the station, and they have to make their journey back home, you know, for their marriage, you know, for the brother's marriage. But like along the way, they have to camp, they have to get to know each other, they have to talk, because like what else are they going to do? Like just sit in silence? So they get to know each other, and they realize that they might be perfect for each other and that she shouldn't marry the brother. And it's that forbidden love. But I thought that this one was just so boring because I don't personally like Western novels to begin with, but this one focused a lot on like carriage rides, slow burn conversations, and like them kind of getting into trouble but not really. And a lot of people really like this book, but I just personally didn't like it, and I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. So the last author that I do want to talk about is another historical romance author called Elizabeth Hoyt. I really need to read this series. I need to finish the series, but I just don't want to say goodbye to the series, but like don't question me. Anyways, it's the Maiden Lane series by Elizabeth Hoyt, and this is actually book number 8 in the series. It's called Dearest Rogue. I always forget the title of this book, and it's hilarious, but I remember it now. Anyways, our heroine is going blind. She needs help because she's losing her vision. Things aren't always accessible, and it's not built for accessibility back in the olden days. So her older brother actually like hires his best friend to watch over her because there's like little things that's been happening to her lately that is like, is she clumsy because she's losing her vision, or is someone actually trying to kill her? So our older brother hires his best friend to kind of take care of her, and our hero is a war veteran who has been doing like army work for a long time, but he has since injured his leg and he cannot longer perform his duty. So he's kind of just like stay-at-home bodyguard basically. And they both have like this relationship where they lean on each other a lot because he doesn't feel like he's a real man now that he has an injured leg. Meanwhile, she feels like she might be losing a whole chunk of her life because she can no longer see. So they both like are very vulnerable with each other. And I just love this relationship so much. So the book that I didn't like from Elizabeth Hoyt was this one called To Seduce a Sinner. And this is part of her Legend of Four Soldiers series. This is book number 2. This one, it's like a little bit hard already when you read the synopsis. Basically, our hero needs to produce an heir. So he sets forth to go find a suitable woman to, you breed with. And she willingly agrees because she just wants to have like the money and the security, but she also doesn't want love. So they both think that this is like a really great deal because she's willing to do everything that she needs to do to perform her wifely duties, but then she just wants out. And then they both have like this relationship where they try to set forth and try to produce an heir, but they're keeping each other at arm's length. And it's supposed to be like a slow burn romance. And it just turned into a really boring romance because our two characters just didn't even want to be in the same room with each other. I just didn't like it at all. I thought it was so boring, and I was like begging for the audiobook to end at one point. Basically, our heroine doesn't want to marry our hero also because she has loved someone before, but she has unfortunately lost him. So now she's kind of like left devastated, and she can no longer love anymore because it just hurts too much. If I want to read Elizabeth Hoyt, I think I'm just going to stick to the Maiden Lane series. But anyways, that is it for all the best and worst books from my favorite authors in my personal opinion. I do have other couple of favorite authors that were on my list, but I just didn't want to make this video super long. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you want to hear more from me and my opinions, and I'll see you guys again next time in a new video. Bye.